Hey everyone, it's Lexi. So in today's video, I'll be doing a long anticipated book haul. So the last time I did a book haul was like back in, maybe May, June-ish. And so since then I've acquired a lot of books. My goal for 2024 was to only buy 14 books, and I was doing really good. And then I was just really upset with the results of the election. I did a lot of stress buying. So a lot of these are a result of that, in combination with books that I already had pre-ordered for that I was anticipating. So I have a lot of books to cover, so without further ado, let's get started. So in my description of these books, I'm going to try to be as, fast as possible, just because there's a lot of books that I need to cover. And this first bunch are ones that I've already read. So first up, I have Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and this is a nonfiction book where she talks about her relationship with plants, being a kind of botanist, and also the relationship she has being an Indigenous woman with the world around her. I listened to this one on audiobook, and I picked up my own copy as well. It was incredibly well written, and I think it really opens up your eyes for the relationship that we as humans have with our kind of, plants, the environment around us, and it was really eye-opening. So if you're looking for an interesting nonfiction, I highly recommend that you check this one out. Next, I picked up the special editions for One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, and I really love this series. I read it towards the end of 2023, and it became one of my favorite series of all time. So when they announced that Barnes & Nobles was releasing kind of this special edition, I obviously had to pick up a copy of these. They're just so beautiful. They have nice sprayed edges, a nice kind of gold decal on the covers, but it takes place in this fantastical world where there is this mist that is infecting the people and of the kingdom, and if you're infected by the mist, you are most likely to be sentenced to death because it gives you some sort of magical abilities. Our main character was someone who was infected by the mist, but that was kept hidden by to the king, so she's been kind of keeping this secret. And there's this magic system that involves cards, so if you are in possession of the card, it gives you that ability, and it kind of goes off from there. I think it's best to kind of dive in not knowing too much about this, but like I said, it's one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, and so I had to pick up my copy of these, and this is actually like very heavy. I think they used like nice quality paper, and boy is it heavy. So this was a book that I got from the library that I ended up picking up my own physical copy for, and it is The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhorn, and this takes place in the late 1700s, where we follow this woman who was a midwife, and she is the midwife of this kind of small town in newly established America, and she ends up treating this woman who becomes pregnant from a rape, and it kind of leads to this kind of trial throughout the community, and it kind of goes from there. This is loosely based off of a real life woman who was involved with these events, and I think if you're looking for a historical fiction that takes place in a unique time period, really focusing on women's stories throughout history, I think this is a really interesting book. There are a lot of themes that run parallel to kind of modern day in terms of rape culture, victim blaming, all those things. So it's very well written. It was incredibly intriguing, and I really enjoyed it. So having got this one from the library, I wanted to pick up my own copy as well. Next, this is another one that I got from the library that I wanted to get my own copy for, and it's Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and I really like this. I haven't read any other books by this author because I know this is like a series that is kind of standalones, but they're in the same world and they're connected somehow. But this follows two people who have a history of when they break up with someone, their ex ends up finding the person that they're going to marry after them. So they think they're destined and doomed. But when they realize they have like this same kind of habit with their dating habits, basically they decide that in order to break the curse, they're going to date each other, because then they'll cancel each other out, and from there they're going to meet their husband. So that's almost like a fake dating type of thing. This book I really enjoyed. It does deal with some subject matter that also has, like, not only is it kind of a rom-com, but it also integrates domestic kind of abuse, child abandonment, all these other things, and I thought it was well done. Like I said, I'm trying to go through these fast, but I think it's a perfect summer read if you were looking for one. Next, I have We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. This is the newest book in his series, and it follows Amy, who is this kind of high-end bodyguard who works for this company that basically gets hired by rich people to protect them. So when she is on a remote island protecting a very wealthy author from someone who's trying to kill her, they realize that there are a string of murders taking place that are being set up to make Amy look like she was the one involved, and so she ends up recruiting the help of this famous author and her father-in-law, and it kind of goes from there. If you're a fan of the Tuesday Murder Club or Thursday Murder Club and really like his writing style, his characterization, the humor that is interwoven, the banter between characters, this series has all of that. So I think it is a really fun start to a series, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Next, I have the Briar Club by Kate Quinn, and this was one that I really enjoyed. It's kind of different. It takes place in the 1950s, and it follows all these women who basically live at this boarding house, and there are different stories, and we know at the start of the book that there is a murder that has taken place, so we kind of follow these characters from each chapter as a different character's perspective, kind of leading up to the events that eventually lead to this murder taking place. It is a really unique piece because you're kind of, each chapter is dedicated to each of the different characters, and there's definitely kind of strings that are connecting that where you can see something is elevating, and I really enjoyed it. It is a very kind of interesting character showcase too, and just the relationships that women share, and taking place in the 1950s, especially with kind of, you know, all the things with the USSR and all those things. It was really interesting kind of reading about this time period, so definitely a really unique read. Next, I have The Serpents and the Wings of Night and the sequel, The Ashes and the Starker's King by Carissa Broadbent. This is another one that I got from the library that I ended up really enjoying, so I wanted to pick up my own physical copies, but basically it follows this woman who has been basically raised in a world of vampires. She is a human, and she wants to kind of put herself into this competition where if she wins, she gets blessed by the goddess, and she can kind of make her, you know, wish granted from there. So this one kind of goes off from there. It is a romantasy. I think if you're a fan of ACOTAR, there are very similar like themes or tropes that are utilized in here that I think are the same, but it's definitely a lot of fun. Like, my expectations weren't, you know, tremendously high, but I still had a really good time reading it. So I'm reading the kind of next book in this like spin-off series as well, so I definitely have really enjoyed this, and like I said, they're just kind of a fun, you know, read. This is a book that I was so excited about. Me and my then fiance, now husband, had a little vacation to Boston right kind of before the wedding, and we went to this bookstore, and they had a signed copy of A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny, and this is the second book, and that is signed, and so it has it here, and I was really excited to see it because I know for her newer books that have come out, you always can get the signed editions from like Barnes & Noble or Indigo or those type of things, so coming across one from like her earlier books is very rare, so I was really happy to kind of add this to my collection. This is my favorite series of all time, so I was really happy to find this kind of little gem in that bookstore in Boston. Continuing on with the themes of library books that I read that I wanted to get a physical copy of, this is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I read this towards the end of the summer, and I really enjoyed it. I really love, was it Long Bright River or something, her other book. I think I like that one slightly, but this takes place in the 1970s where we follow this kind of girls' summer camp where one of the prominent girls whose family kind of owns the land that the camp is held on goes missing. It kind of leads to the string of events trying to figure out her disappearance, and it's kind of eerily similar to her brother's disappearance that happened several years ago. So this kind of jumps around in time. We follow her brother's disappearance that happened like 15-16 years prior to this. We follow her parents meeting, all these things of different character perspectives that ultimately lead to this kind of big reveal at the end. So this one was really fun. Like I said, I liked Long Bright River a little bit more, but this was still kind of a fun end of summer murder mystery read. I ended up picking up over kind of Black Friday the Taylor Swift Eras Tour book. As a big Swiftie, I was really excited to kind of get my hands on this. I saw the Eras Tour back in Pittsburgh in 2023. I've been a Swiftie from the first album, so I was really happy to kind of get a little tour book for this, so it was nice kind of seeing the pictures, getting Taylor's perspective on some of these things and all that. So I think if you were a Swiftie, you definitely need to get your hands on a copy of this. Next, this is a book that I listened to on audiobook from the library that I wanted to get a physical copy of, and it is The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This is basically her memoir of kind of growing up, her experience kind of living with a semi-abusive father who was like absent, basically, how she eventually got involved with Broadway, and then ultimately what I feel like she's most known for, which is Gilmore Girls. I really love this. She didn't really shy away from really dark subject matter. She talks about Planned Parenthood, you know, kind of abusive parent relationships, abusive partners, all these things. And I really liked how personal she was, and she didn't shy away from kind of the kind of less admirable parts of her life, which I really enjoyed. So like I said, I think if you're a fan of Gilmore Girls, I liked kind of learning more about her because I didn't really know too much about her kind of going into this. My husband and I are really big foodies, and we really love Stanley Tucci's Searching for Italy. So this was a book that I pre-ordered that I also got listened to on audiobook, but it was Stanley Tucci, What I Ate in 1 Year. So this is basically kind of a diary style where not like every day, but most days of the year he's kind of talking about what he ate, but also it's kind of more than just going into that, but it also talks about themes about how, you know, food and like dinner, sharing a meal, there's so much kind of goes around. So much of our lives is centered around food and sharing memories with your kids at the table, or this was, you know, a recipe that's been passed down through generations, and just how food connects us to our past. I really liked it. I think if you're a fan of Stanley Tucci, I think you'll like this, and I tabbed one of the restaurants that he mentions in here because we'll be going to Dublin for our honeymoon, so he mentions one in there that we're gonna go check out. But I recommend audiobook for this just because, like I said, I like Stanley Tucci's voice, but it's really interesting. It's interesting to see also kind of what he does in a year anyways, so it was interesting to read. This was probably hands down my most anticipated release of the year, and it was The Grey Wolf by Louise Penny, the newest installment in the Inspector Gamache series. I don't want to give too much away about the plot of this one because some of it is interconnected, but basically the premise of this series is that we follow Inspector Gamache, who's head of the homicide department in Quebec, and a lot of his murders somehow get interconnected to a town called Three Pines, and there's very much a sense of found family, like how Stars Hollow feels is how Three Pines and those characters feel. So like I said, my favorite crime series of all time, and one of my favorite reads also of 2024. Next I have Bringer of Dust by J.M. Miro, and this is the second book to the Ordinary Monsters trilogy. So the premise of this series is that it takes place in the mid to late 1800s, where we follow these group of children who are basically recruited to this kind of magical school. So a lot of the magic that these kids have is centered around dust, which kind of gives these people the abilities to do so. And so while these kids are trying to get recruited to safety of the school, there is this kind of darker power that is out to kind of trap these kids or like get a hold of these kids, and we don't really know why. There's definitely another kind of plot going on behind the scenes that we aren't aware of. I really enjoyed the first book, and so I was really excited to dive into this one. This one kind of skews between fantasy, historical fantasy, because it takes place in the 1800s. It takes place in like Barcelona, Japan, Italy, Paris, all these places, Edinburgh, London, all these things. So it not only do you have that kind of historical aspect, but you get fantastical elements, but also there's elements of horror in here as well, and I'm really excited to see what happens next with this series. You just become so attached to the characters. Each chapter kind of jumps around in different perspectives, but it definitely keeps the narration going. So if you're looking for a unique series, I highly recommend you check this one out. I next have a Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio, and this is a kind of novella, follows a group of people that only kind of meet each other or are acquainted through each other because they take their smoke break out in a cemetery, and so they only kind of know each other through those like interactions, and they uncover something that is being dug up in the graveyard, and it kind of leads off to there. I've mentioned that this was one of my least favorite books of the year. It was disappointing. I really loved If We Were Villains, so this one was a little bit disappointing, so definitely not one of my favorites of the year. Next I have Galatea, which is a kind of short story written by Madeline Miller, and it takes place in ancient Greece, where we follow this woman who wakes up in an insane asylum because her husband has sent her there. But what we, the reader, know is that she was actually someone that was sculpted by her husband in marble, and a god blessed her to turn her into a human. And there's a lot of interesting themes. This is one that I read from the library that I wanted to get my physical copy of, and it basically talks about, themes of how women are crazy, domestic violence, just how women are kind of looked down upon them and their mental state, even when they're in an abusive environment. Definitely a lot of themes that are very parallel to current day, and I just really enjoyed this, so I wanted to get my own little copy of this one as well. Another kind of short story I picked up was The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. This is her newest release that has come out recently, and I read this over Christmas time, but it's basically talking about this woman who goes into the woods, and it's basically the only thing I want to describe, but she kind of has an uncanny relationship with animals, so she's kind of viewed differently within her village during this time. Again, this wasn't one of my favorite books of the year. I just don't think it was the target audience for me, but I really enjoyed the descriptions of like the woods at winter time and kind of how, you know, everything seems like it's on hold, but the woods are really kind of still alive at that point. I really like that aspect, and I love the illustrations in here, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. And lastly, to kind of round up books that I've already read, I then have Heartbreak is the National Anthem by Rob Sheffield. This is basically him talking about how Taylor Swift has kind of redefined what being a pop artist is, the longevity of her work, and how there really has never been a pop artist like this. This was another one of my disappointing reads, because although he promises to kind of talk about these things, he doesn't necessarily delve into what kind of has made Taylor Swift a phenomenon, like what makes her an outlier amongst so many other pop artists. He talks mostly about what, you know, each of the albums mean to him, and those type of things. So kind of that breakdown of how Taylor Swift has reinvented pop, like the tagline here, he doesn't really go into. So I was definitely disappointed. And I think if you're a Swiftie and are familiar with her career, kind of these kind of random fun facts, I don't think you'll really take much away from this. So it was a little bit disappointing for me. So in 2024, I really got into kind of reading the Bridgerton series because I'm a big fan of the TV show. So I read the first 5, I guess. So the first 4 box set my friend gave me, and so I then picked up the last box set, which has books 4 through 8, I guess, or guys 5 through 8 basically. I've read She's So Filled with Love, but I wanted to pick up kind of the other books as well. They're kind of fun reads to just when I need a little break from like a fantasy or, you know, an intense historical fiction. It gives me a little bit of a break to kind of read these and just get immersed in the world and the characters. So next we're moving on to books that are currently on my TBR shelf that I haven't read yet. And I do apologize if you can hear the fan. I was getting really hot, so I needed to put that on, but I have my big stack here, so let's go ahead and get started. Next I have The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Kristen Broadbent. This is her newest book that is in the spin-off duology from the other series that I talked about. I'm currently reading this one right now, but it follows Misha, I don't know how to correctly pronounce it, after the events of the kind of first duology, so I don't want to spoil it there, but it's just a continuation of her story basically. And I believe there's gonna be 3 kind of duologies within this world, so far I'm really liking it. I want to be vague because I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but yeah, this is one that I am currently reading right now, and that was a new release towards the end of last year. So these next 3 were ones that my husband got for me. This first one is one that I actually just finished not too long ago, and is The Secret War of Julia Child. It talks about her experience kind of in the OSS, and it's kind of a reimagination, a fictionalization of her time being basically an agent during World War II. It kind of covers her experience in Eastern Asia, kind of in, I want to say she is in basically India, China, all these places, and you find like where she ends up meeting Paul and all those types of things. I'll delve into this more into my January wrap up, but overall I really enjoyed it, and it was a really interesting read. I like how it takes place in World War II in an era that I am not necessarily, or an area that I'm not familiar with, so it was interesting learning about that side of the war that I feel like for the most part my history classes didn't really delve into. Next, this is one of my husband's favorite books that he got for me, and it is The Confederacy of Dunces, I think that's how you pronounce it, by John Kennedy Toole. But it says it is a American common masterpiece. Toole's hero is one Ignatius J. Riley, huge, obese, factious, fastidious, and later day Gargantua, a Don quote of the French Quarter. His story bursts with wholly original characters, denizens of New Orleans' lower depths, incredible true-to-life dialogue, and the zaniest series of high and low comic adventure. He said this one is really interesting, and I think this will be a very unique read, so definitely something that I am a little interested, something outside of my comfort zone to kind of read. And lastly, this is one that he got me for Christmas, and it is Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. I know this is a very classic book, and it's one that I've never read. I think it was just way my curriculums worked with school. This was one that we just didn't really get into. And basically it says, Catch-22 remains a cornerstone of American literature and one of the funniest and most celebrated books of all time. Set in Italy during World War II, this is the story of the incomparable usurine, and hero who is furious because thousands of people he will never met are trying to kill him. But his real problem is not the enemy, it is his own army, which keeps increasing the number of missions the men must fly to compete their service. So I know this is one that is a classic for American history or American literature, and I do like how it's set in World War II. I did not know that, so I'm very interested to read this one. Like I said, I know it's a classic, and it's one that I have not read yet. Next, this is a new release that came out towards the end of 2024, and is The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. And this is I'm really excited about because I really love The Kiss of Deception and The Remnant Chronicles. When it first came out, I was obsessed, and so this is kind of her newest one. This is, I believe, a standalone that involves kind of fae, and so her kind of parents have gone missing, and she discovers that there may be more to her parents' disappearance that meets the eye. It somehow involves this kind of fae world, and it goes off from there, and I kind of got the nice kind of special edition of this one, so I'm definitely excited to go into this. My plan is to read this in January, so we'll see, fingers crossed. But yeah, so definitely interesting. It's been a while since I've read a Mary E. Pearson book. This is one that I picked up from my local bookstore, and I've been kind of wanting the ACOTAR vibes recently, and so I picked up House of Beating Wings by Olivia Wildenstein. So it says, all her life, Fallon has been marked by her half-humanity. Nearly every pure-blooded fae at court has looked down on her for her curved ears, lack of magic, and fondness for water serpents, but never Dante, the Prince of Lucy. The flirtatious royal has held Fallon's heart ever since Dante gave Fallon her first kiss, but as doubt creeps in on how a fae prince and a halfling could ever have lasting happiness together, Fallon finds hope in an oracle's prophecy. She will be queen, but first she must free the crows. Confused yet determined, Fallon embarks on the hunt that could give her everything she wanted but could never have: power, respect, perhaps even acceptance, and most desirably her prince. But unknown to Fallon, her quest will unleash more than just her destiny, and when the ancient demon awakens, he plans to have Fallon all to himself. This kind of gives me Cruel Prince vibes, ACOTAR vibes, and we'll see how I feel about it. So this was a book that I purchased around the election in preparation for having our first female president, because I was so excited. And it is Kamala Harris, The Truths We Hold. So this is kind of talking about her experience being a daughter of immigrants, civil rights activists, and kind of the challenges that she's faced throughout her career. I do definitely want to read this. I just find her so inspirational, and like I said, I'm still devastated, but I think I need a little bit of time before I pick this up. But definitely she's so inspirational, and I do want to kind of know more about her kind of story and her experiences. I think she's such an incredible woman, but I do think I need a little bit of time before I pick this one up. I'm a huge fan of Erik Larson's kind of non-fiction books, and his newest one came out, which is The Demon of Unrest, and this one just sounds interesting, but it basically talks about the Civil War, which I'm really excited about, which is a time period I really loved reading about. But it says, on November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln became the victor in a tight race for president. The country was bitterly at odds. Southern extremists were moving even closer to destroying the Union, with one state after another seceding, and Lincoln powerless to stop them. Slavery fueled the conflict, but somehow the passions of North and South came to focus on the lonely federal fortress in Charleston Harbor, Fort Sumter. Master storyteller Erik Larson offers a gripping account of the chaotic months between Lincoln's election and the Confederacy shelling of Sumter, a period marked by tragic errors and miscommunication, inflamed egos, and craven ambitions. personal tragedies, and betrayals. Lincoln himself wrote that the trials of these 5 months were so great that could I have anticipated them, I would not have believed it possible to survive them. So I really have enjoyed his writing style. Eric Larson kind of writes these nonfictions in a way where he's pulling from quotes, he's pulling from diaries of the actual people that were a part of the events, but he writes them in a way that I think is very accessible. You don't feel like you're reading a kind of history book or anything like that. So definitely am really excited to dive into this one. Maybe it'll be one that I'll pick up on an audiobook, who knows, but it was nice to kind of add this to my collection. Next I have Lethal Vengeance by Robert Brinzilla. This is the 8th book in the Erica Foster series, and I don't really like, for my crime series, I don't really like knowing too much about them, so I just kind of like to go in. But basically the premise is we follow Erica Foster, who's a detective in the Met in London, and it kind of goes off from there. But yeah, this is the 8th book in the series, so I don't, like I said, I don't want to give too much away on this one. This is one I've heard really great things about, and it is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and I believe this is a series as well, so it's always fun to kind of start a new series to see if you like it. But it says, ever since she was cursed by a fairy, Theodora has had no sense of fear or embarrassment, an unfortunate condition that leaves her prone to accidental scandal. Dora hopes to be quiet, sensible wallflower during the London season, but when Elias, the handsome, peculiar, and utterly ill-mannered lord, discovers her conditions, she is instead drawn into dangerous fairy affairs. So it kind of goes off from there. This one is also kind of short too. I've heard that the Fae are described in here similar to how kind of Holly Black is known for, like the Spiderwick Chronicles or the Folk of the Air, or how Emily Wilde kind of describes the Fae, where they kind of have teeth to them, they're kind of ugly. And I really love that kind of depiction of Fae, as opposed to kind of like they're so beautiful. So I really like kind of the grit of that, so I'm excited to dive in, and it's nice too that this one is under 300 pages, so excited to dive into this one. This one just seems so interesting, where it's a blend, kind of a historical magical realism one, and perfect to read during winter time. And it's called Pearly Everlasting by Tammy Armstrong. And it says, New Brunswick, 1934. When a cook in a lodging camp finds an orphan baby bear, he brings it home to his wife, who names the cub Bruno and raises him along her new side daughter, Pearly Everlasting. Growing up, Pearly and Bruno become inseparable, and the camp's woodmen accept and embrace the tame young bear too. But all that changes when his new supervisor arrives, a ruthless profiteer who pushes the workers to their breaking point and has it in for Bruno. When the man is found dead, the blame falls on the bear. Soon after, Bruno is kidnapped and sold to an animal trader. Determined to rescue her only brother she's ever known, Pearly, now a teenager, sets off alone on a horizon journey through the forest. In her quest to find him and bring him home through miles of ice and snow, eluding malevolent spirits and the cruelty of strangers, she will discover new worlds and the strength that she never knew possessed. I just think this sounds so interesting and really unique too, so I wonder if there'll be kind of magical realism aspects in here. I'm not sure, but definitely I'm really interested to dive into this one during the winter season. Next is this book that I've seen everywhere and heard really great things about, and it is Northwoods by Danielle Mason. This is, it says here, when two young lovers abscond from the Puritan colony, little do they know that their humble cabin in the woods would become the home of an extraordinary succession of human and non-human characters alike. An English soldier, destined for glory, abandons the battlefield of the New World to devote himself to growing apples. A pair of spinster twins navigate war and famine, envy and desire. A crime reporter unearths an ancient mass grave, only to discover that the earth refuses to give up its secrets. A lovelorn painter, a sinister conman, a stalking panther, a lusty beetle. As the inhabitants confront the wonder and mystery around them, begin to realize that the dark, raucous, beautiful place is very much alive. I really love books that show like how something is connected through time and how the history of a place. So this one seems just really interesting, and I am so excited to dive into this one. Next I have this chonker of a book that I've heard really great things about, and is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This says, as an assassin for the rebellion group, Rave's job is to complete orders and never get caught. When a rival bounty hunter turns her world upside down, blood spills, heartbreak, and Rave finds herself imprisoned by the Guild of Nobles, a group of powerful fae who turn her into a political statement. Crushed by the loss of his great love, Can took the head of a king and donned his melted crown. Now on a tireless quest to While the never-ebbed ache in his heart, a clue lures him into the capital's high-security prison where he stumbles upon the imprisoned Braved. So I'm really excited for this one. This one is quite the chonker, but I've heard people say really great things about this one, so this is one I'm going to have to dedicate a lot of time to. It is quite chonky, but nevertheless I'm really excited to dive in, and this cover is just so beautiful. All right, we're getting down to the last 5 books here. This is one you probably have heard about, but it's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a book I've heard people rave about, so I'm finally diving into this one. So it says, on a bitter cold day in the December of his junior year in Harvard, Sam exits a subway car and sees amid the hordes of people waiting on the platform Sadie Green. He calls her name. For a moment she pretends she hasn't heard them, but then she turns and a game begins, a legendary collaboration that will launch them into stardom. These friends, intimate since childhood, borrow money, beg favors, and before even graduating college, they have created their first blockbuster in Chico. Overnight, the world is theirs. Spanning 30 years from Cambridge to Venice Beach, this is a dabbling novel that examines the multifarious nature of identity, disability, failure, and redemption possibilities in play, and above all, our need to connect. This one I've heard really great things about, so I'm happy I finally had my own copy to read. Next I have The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters, and this one again was one that I found so intriguing, but it says July 1962, following the tradition of Indigenous workers from Nova Scotia, a family arrives to Maine to pick blueberries for the summer. Weeks later, 4-year-old Ruthie, the family's youngest child, vanishes. She is last seen by her 6-year-old brother Joe, sitting on a favorite rock on the edge of the berry field. Joe will remain distraught by his sister's disappearance for years to come. In Maine, a young woman named Nora grows up as the only child of an affluent family. Her father is emotionally distant, her mother frustratingly overprotective. Nora is often troubled by recurring dreams and visions that seem much more like memories than imagination. As she grows older, Nora slowly comes to realize that there is something her parents aren't telling her. Unwilling to abandon her intuition, she will spend decades trying to uncover this family secret. This one just seems so interesting. I love kind of the mysteries of the past kind of unraveling themselves, and this one just seems like it'll be really heartbreaking. This is another one that I've heard really great things about, and it is The Beautiful Ones by Sylvia Morena Garcia. I've read what is her other one called, Mexican Gothic, and I really enjoyed that one. So this one is They Are the Beautiful Ones, Loisale's most notable societies, and this spring is Nina's chance to join their ranks courtesy of her well-connected cousin and his calculating wife. But the grand season has just begun, and already Nina's debut has gone disastrously awry. She has always struggled to control her telekinesis. Neighbors call her the Witch of Old House, and the haphazard manifestations of her powers make her the subject of Melissa's gossip. So this one seems interesting. I love kind of how there's kind of magical aspects thrown into kind of modern day or like a regular day society, so I'm really interested to see. I really loved her writing style, so I'm excited to finally read another book of hers. And lastly, kind of to round out this huge haul, I then have 2 books in a crime series. I have first The Lost Victim by Robert Brinzida, which is the newest book in the Kate Marshall series, and Dreamtown by Lee Goldberg, which is the next book in the Eve Ronan series. That's all I'll kind of say about these, because I feel like you guys are probably sick and tired of me talking about books. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of your kind of favorite purchases were of last year. So I think there's kind of roughly 35-ish books here. But yeah, definitely a lot, and I'm definitely going to be on a bit of a book buying ban. There's some new releases that I'm excited about. For the most part, I want to keep the buying kind of down low, but so you probably won't see a book haul for me for a little while, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.